Oh, hello. You're probably wondering, didn't he say the next couple of videos would be Ben 10 related? Yeah, I know. And trust me, I thought so too, but life isn't all daffodil daydream. Sometimes things don't go as planned, but I promise I will get to them eventually. I got one of them basically done, but because I don't have them coming out, I had to pivot and find something else to make a video on, and figured since the release of Deadpool and Wolverine, and that I've been rewatching all the X-Men movies again recently, I thought, why not just make the video on those? Starting with the Deadpools. It sucks I basically had to just skip 2 months of video releases. Usually I like to drop a video a month, but in July I took an extended break to play Marvel Rivals closed beta because of course I would. Then August, while working on the Alien Force video, I hit a brick wall and won't be able to put those videos out seemingly anytime soon. But finally, we should be back to monthly uploads. With that being said, let's start the Deadpool movie reviews.
Maximum effort.
The first Deadpool movie is in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. I remember back when I was in high school when the leaked footage dropped, and then a couple years later when I was 16 and the movie came out, begging my dad to let me go see it. Because back then, Deadpool was my favorite Marvel character. Now he's been overtaken again by the greatest hero of all time, but he's still number 2. Regardless, since then I've watched this movie more times than I can count, and I've gotten to the point where I just sit there on my phone quoting the movie while it's happening, and know the scenes and dialogue like the back of my hand. I even was able to watch this movie every day for a month straight once it came out on DVD, sometimes even multiple times a day, and I've only ever been able to do that with one other movie. Needless to say, I think I like this movie a bit too much. It makes a real review kind of hard for it, because if I'm being totally honest, I think this movie's kind of the perfect superhero movie. It's rated R, so it doesn't have to hold itself back, and even though there is gore, they don't overdo it to a point where it's just enough to be realistic, but not too far as to be disturbing. The gore and violence honestly isn't even the selling point here either. There's a great and fun story being told here, a romance story, and the way it's being told is mwah, chef's kiss. The discontinuous narrative this movie goes with fits so well for a Deadpool movie. Deadpool as a character is zany and all over the place, so telling a story in which he's the narrator non-chronologically is perfect. And this may just be my opinion, but I normally hate origin stories. Origin stories are usually super boring to me, because I just want to see these characters in their full glory, but in origin stories, you usually don't get that until like the final act. But the discontinuous narrative here makes the origin story way more bearable to me, and with the way the story is told, I'm more hooked in and interested with Wade and the characters before he becomes Deadpool, because the story makes me want to go back whenever it's interrupted with the present day events again. Now this movie isn't just a romance superhero movie, it's also a comedy, and like all comedy, whether you find it funny or not is completely subjective. So these movies tend to have a big disparity between people who like it and who don't. Because if the comedy isn't for you, this movie gets significantly worse. I still think the movie itself is good enough to still make it semi-enjoyable, even if you are rolling your eyes and cringing every time there's a joke, just because it's that well made. Even to me, there are a few jokes in this movie that are just not funny. But for every joke I didn't like, there were like 5 I did. The action sequences are also top tier in this movie, with the countdown of the 12 bullets and the huge final battle that totally doesn't take place on a helicarrier. And I love the inclusion of big name X-Men like Colossus and
Negasonic Teenage. What the shit?
Okay, but seriously though, I think Colossus is great in this movie, and they finally portray him right, and Negasonic Teenage Warhead grows on you as well. I also think the British villain is fantastic. Francis is one of my favorite movie villains. He has so much personality to him. He's so hateable, his actor just makes a great villain, and his dynamic with Deadpool throughout the movie is done so well. There isn't a character here that I genuinely dislike. Kinda. Weasel to me just comes off like a guy trying to be Deadpool with his comedy, but failing miserably and being way worse at it, even though he does have a few moments that are funny.
Wait, we have a fucking problem. And by we, I mean you. I'd go with you, but I don't wanna.
But at least we have Dopinder and Blind Owl, who are such great charming additions to this movie, that honestly without, this movie wouldn't be nearly as good. And with the main guy Deadpool himself, they knock it out of the park with his portrayal. He's probably the most comic accurate character that's ever been adapted to film, down from his suit to the way he acts. They don't just show the overly joking, annoying side to him either. We even get a more serious version of him in moments that call for it, and you really get a great understanding of the character here. Quick side note, Jeremy here is actually so bold, asking this lunatic with a gun, threatening someone for a big tip. Like, even if he wasn't there for you, what makes you think the gun-toting maniac is a nice guy? Later, during the final fight with Francis, he says,
You grow back body parts now, Wade. When I'm finished, parts will have to grow back you.
But Francis already left before he cuts his hand off, so how would he even know about that? Overall, this movie is phenomenal, and it may just be because the sheer amount of times I've watched it, but it's downright perfect in my eyes. There's only one thing that I noticed towards the end that ever since I saw it, I can't unsee it, and it really distracts me, and that's when Vanessa's about to remove Wade's mask, and you see behind him, and okay, looks normal, it cuts away, cuts back, okay, still normal, cuts away, and then boom, cuts back again, and what the hell, where did that Velcro strip come from? I get it, it's there to make it easier for Vanessa to take off and to not mess up the stapled on Hugh Jackman face, but still, the fact it keeps cutting back and forth, and on one of the cuts it just suddenly changes is so distracting. Did I say this movie was perfect? Never mind, this movie sucks ass. 0 out of 10. Next.
If I could turn back time.
Okay, just kidding. My actual rating is, yes, of course, a 10 out of 10. Again, that may be high to some people, and I fully realize I like this movie way more than the average person, but I do not care. It's perfect. I will shout it from the rooftops.
I'm ugly and I'm proud! I am ugly and I'm proud! I'm ugly and I'm proud!
Is that what he calls it?
If I could turn back time.
Okay, second movie, and everything seems to be going great for Wade, but we need some sort of conflict, but we already had Vanessa kidnapped. What should we do? Oh, that. We're just gonna do that. So when it comes to Deadpool 2, I've seen a lot of people say they like it better than the first Deadpool, and I think they're both great and a little similar, but I don't know, I always liked the first one more. Now that I'm really thinking about it, I couldn't really tell you why. Maybe it's just because I have a strong bias towards it because of how many times I've seen it. I mean, the second one came out, I didn't even go see it in theaters. I just straight up waited for it to release on DVD. The second one does have better characters while also keeping the same characters from the first, so it really should just be the first one but better. Are we in real time watching me change my opinion I've had for years? Anyway, I've seen people say that the second was a better movie, but wasn't as funny, and I was a bit confused about that, because the comedy seemed fine to me, and seemed on the level, if not funnier, than the first at times, but I've come to realize I have a very different relationship with this movie than the majority of people. Because I never saw the movie when it released in theaters, and I waited till it came to DVD, the first time I saw the movie, I saw the super duper cut, which adds extra bits to scenes and changes the jokes in a few scenes. At first, I did not know this. I knew the super duper cut added like an extra 15 minutes to the movie, but I didn't know that some jokes were completely different as well. And after seeing the original theatrical version compared to the super duper cut, I can say the super duper cut is way funnier. And it's not even close. And I can see what people are saying about the comedy not being as good. Every time I watch this movie, I'd watch the super duper cut because of course I would. Why would I not watch the same movie but with the added 15 minutes? But I never knew how different the movie feels in terms of comedy between the two. There's only like one joke I prefer in the original compared to the super duper cut. And the rest, the super duper cut is just much better. And the added 15 minutes to the scenes aren't just garbage they added for no reason either. They all add to make the movie more enjoyable to watch. The super duper cut also changes the soundtrack a bit, specifically changing Take On Me at the end with a different version of Ashes. And it fits the scene so much better in my opinion. Basically, for this review, just know when I'm talking about this movie, I'm specifically talking about the super duper cut version, since I have no real idea of the regular theatrical version. If I had to say though, I think the movie is still good, but definitely not better than the first if we are talking theatrical release. But the super duper cut might just make this movie on the same level as the first. Anyway, to talk about the actual movie, let me just start by saying I love how they do these intro scenes. The songs are great, and the credits just being jokes instead of real credits will always be funny. And I love how this one does a James Bond spoof. Now, while the last movie was a love story, this one is a family film, and you can really feel it. The family theme is carried very well throughout the movie, starting from Wade and Vanessa going to start a family together, to Wade joining the X-Men as a trainee, and him meeting the kid, to him putting together the X-Force, meeting Domino and Cable, and even Cable's whole story revolving around his family being killed as well. I love these themes they give the movies. It makes the movies not just feel like a basic superhero movie. When it comes to the characters, there are a lot of characters in this movie. We have our returning characters from the first, plus a slew of new ones introduced. And speaking of that, I've seen some complaints about the X-Men cameo scene, and how they thought it was annoying to turn these characters' cameos into a short joke joke that only really works the first time you see it, but I think this was the best way to go about it. The last thing this movie needs is more characters. I mean, we have the returning cast with Deadpool, Weasel, Dopinder, Vanessa, Colossus, and Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Then you have the new characters introduced, like Cable, Domino, all the other members of the X-Force, Russell, Juggernaut, Yukio, so more characters wouldn't really do this movie any justice. And sure, you could have just had a bunch of characters walking around the school while Deadpool roams the halls, but then you miss out on honestly a great joke that is even a callback to the first. We also don't need Wade to interact with any of these characters where he's at in the story. He doesn't need Professor X to go into his head and feel his pain and all that shit. He needs Colossus, the X-Men we saw have his back in the first movie, and the one we see him actually build and have an existing relationship with. This just works the best for the story. Anyway, small rant over, back to the review. I liked Cable's character in this, and even though very different from Deadpool, they're still similar in their motivations.
Hey, I needed to ask you, what's with the creepy, dirty hobo bear?
It's not dirt. It's the blood of my dead daughter.
I mean, isn't that not true? She was burned alive, right? And left charred, so wouldn't that be like charred remains of her or something? Russell's character was honestly annoying to me. His jokes weren't very funny and a bit cringe, and he was just a bit annoying in general. It was cool to see Juggernaut though, and done so well, especially after
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
and the CGI fight between him and Colossus was still cool to get. This movie also actually had a few kills in here that genuinely made me wince. Usually while watching movies with over-the-top violence, since it's just a movie, I'm not really moved by it. But during that scene with Domino and the guys at the orphanage, every time I see the guy fall on the scissors face first and the wardrobe fall on the guy's head, I always wince and can't help but want to look away. Like, those were fucked. And finally, seeing Colossus call Juggernaut fuckernot and look so upset when no one reacts is so funny. He thinks he's being so cute and funny and unexpected by swearing here, and is so disappointed when no one cares. He might actually never swear again. Anyway, after all that yapping, I give Deadpool 2 a 9.5 out of 10, at least for the super duper cut. I might give the regular version like an 8 out of 10, but again, I'm not too familiar with it enough to really say. Well, that's my take and opinion on the Deadpool movies, and up next we'll have a big two-parter with all the X-Men movies. The first one starting with the first X-Men all the way to the Wolverine, and then the second from First Class onward. I might also do a video on Deadpool and Wolverine as well, and if I do, then that'll be the next video. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, leave your thoughts on the Deadpool movies in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye, Yukio.